Actually, we have a short presentation by our famous friend Cham about the landscape of internet in the MENA region. So,
thank you. As a Mediterranean person, I use my hands a lot, so I'll try this, the wearable microphone. So my name is Cham. I'm a senior public policy technical advisor, I know, a mouthful, at the NCC. And I'm here to present the work of two of my wonderful colleagues, Qasim and Anastasia. They just issued and published a report that they've been working on for a while, navigating the internet landscape in the Middle East. So basically, we analyze the adoption of certain technologies in our region. And most specifically, these two technologies are IPv6 and RPKI. I have to apologize before I start. I was told that I walk a lot, and that can be distracting. You'll have to bear with me for the next 10 minutes. So, without further ado, this report is divided in two parts. The first one being routing security, right? The second part is IPv6, so let's start with this one for now. But before I start, I would like to talk to you about the RPKI framework itself. So this is, think of RPKI as a set of tools or a framework that enables us to better secure the BGP around the internet, right? In an earlier presentation today, we saw that BGP might have some loopholes when it comes to security. And in fact, according to some data, in the last year alone, almost every country in our region was subject to either being an attack, like a victim, or a source of BGP incidents on the internet. In some cases, in some countries, we were able to detect more than 70 incidents that targeted the IP space of a certain country. All right, so RPKI is, as I said, a set of tools that would allow you to protect your identity on the internet, more or less. It works like this. The holder of a certain IP address will need to create cryptographically verifiable statements that say, these are my IP addresses, and they will be used by this autonomous system number on the internet. So this is what we refer to as the ROAs, Root Origin Authorization. It is the responsibility of every holder of an IP address to create the statement that says, how will my IP address be used on the internet? Now, the second part of RPKI is called ROV, Root Origin Validation. It means when I have a router connected to the internet, instead of trusting my neighbors on the internet, I will start checking everything that they tell me through the statements that were created earlier on. So RPKI has two phases, two parts. Let's see how we're doing in the region when it comes to each one of these parts. We'll start with the first, which is the ROA, Root Origin Authorization. Again, this is simply very straightforward. I hold an IP range, I go to the portal, and I say, this IP range will be announced by these networks. So I'm happy to say that the region here is in a very good place, specifically when it comes to IPv4. So what you're seeing here, let me see if I can get the laser to work. Yes. So what you're seeing here is basically the percentage of the IP space, whether it is IPv4 or IPv6, that is covered by these cryptographically verifiable statements. So we see that in Yemen, almost 100% of the IP space have some sort of statement that says these IP should be done like that. In the UAE, same. In Lebanon, same. Palestine, same, etc. And for reference, we put to the right side of the screen some countries, some in the region, some in the other parts of our service region, and you see that the majority of the countries in our region is doing better in terms of ROA coverage. Now, I have to say that the situation in IPv4 is better than in IPv6. but that's not something too alarming. It is just because in the IPv6 world, the IP ranges are so much bigger and so much more distributed. In the IPv4 world, the IPv4 addresses were mostly concentrated with the service providers and the ISPs. So while we're in a good place, we still have a little bit of work to be done on the IPv6 level. Now let's look a little bit at some of the countries and see how this evolved through time. I will not be going through all the countries. They are noted inside the report. But since we're in Oman, I'm going to show you snapshots of these. So the efforts of few can lead to a lot of results, big results and quick results. So we can see that somewhere around mid-2021, towards the end of 2021, there was a company in Oman, Qatar Telecommunication Company, they decided, all right, we're going to start creating ROAs. And then suddenly the coverage of the IPv4 space in Oman jumped to 33%. Then we saw that at a later point in July 2021, other companies joined board, and suddenly we saw the percentage skyrocketing all the way to around 90%. Sometimes operators are proactive in doing that. In other cases, they need a little bit of help. So this is something that we've been doing since 2022 in the region, both my colleague Shafiq here sitting in the front and myself. So we designed a series of engagements in some of the countries to push for the adoption of such technologies. So in 2023, we had a workshop for our members from Syria. We did that in Lebanon. And right after the workshop, we saw the big push towards around 50% of the IP space covered. The same thing was replicated in UAE and Saudi Arabia. And these two countries are a bit special. Everyone is special, but in this case, they are more special because between them, we're talking about almost 75% to 80% of the IPv4 addresses in the MENOG region. So it was very important for us to target this and get the ROA coverage up high. And we were lucky in our efforts. We were also lucky that the regulators in both countries were excellent partners, and we were able to, just after our workshops, to push the adoption of the coverage very, very high. Now, let's talk about the second part. We have now created these statements that says these IP addresses will be announced by these networks. But are we protecting ourselves? Are we filtering the noise from the BGP based on this data? Well, here it's a little bit different. The story changes a little bit. What we're going to show you in the next couple of visualizations are the networks that are active in each country. Some of these networks might be local, some of them might be foreign networks that act inside our region, inside our network, and inside our country. And the bigger the circle is, it means the more important this network is in connecting the country, the users, to the internet. So if you see, for example, in Oman, you have a few of these big circles. So these are the big networks that are connecting the eyeballs, the users, the other networks in Oman to the internet. Now, the thing is, if we take a look at this network over here, 28885, I will not go into names here, either they are not doing the filtering based on the ROAs, or there's not enough data. But I can tell you for a fact that there is no filtering being done here in Oman. Why does it matter? It matters because if these networks do not filter based on the ROA statements, it means we will still be exposed to stuff like IP hijacking, root leaks, misconfigurations, and so on. So not to pick on Oman, we also contrasted it with Bahrain, where we have a little bit more networks that play a role in connecting the country to the internet. And over there, most of the networks are not doing filtering. All right, and this is something that we need to address, and we need your help in doing so. Now, you might ask me, should all the networks inside the country do these filtering? And my answer would be, it depends. And in order to show you what I mean, we are going to take two models, two ICT market models in the Levant area. The first one to the left is Jordan, where we have a more liberal ICT sector in terms of connecting to the international bandwidth, and to the right, my home country, Lebanon, where all the networks have to go through one central network called Liban Telecom before they connect to the internet. So what does it look like? Let's focus a little bit more. If we see Jordan, we see there are lots of networks there of equal sizes, of foreign versus local, etc. Whatever you see in red, these are networks that are actively filtering based on the ROA technology and the ROA statements. So while some of them are doing good, there are big networks, so we see 48832, ASN 9038, 6762, they are still lagging behind. So these are networks, again, that are carrying and connecting part of Jordan to the internet, and they are not implementing yet this technology. So there is room for growth. And in Jordan, because the market is liberal and open, the more players we have, the better it is. Now let's jump to Lebanon. If you see in Lebanon, we have more ISPs. I think after Iraq, we have the highest number of ISPs in the country, maybe even more than Iraq. But the thing is, they are small ISPs distributed here and there across the country. However, all of them, they need to go through 42020, which is Liban Telecom, to go to the internet. So the question is now, we see some of these small circles, they are in blue, they are doing the filtering. Do we need all of the 100 circles, all the 100 networks, small networks to do filtering? Well, the nice thing about this technology is there's something called collateral benefit. So since every network is crossing through 42020, Liban Telecom, to get to the internet, if Liban Telecom does the filtering, it will appear as if the whole country is protected by this technology. So if I'm a regulator, if I'm someone who's interested in driving the cybersecurity statute in one of the countries, we have to think how we will address this. Best case scenario, in the best version of this world, everything here would be around red circles. Everyone would be filtering. We know that this is unrealistic. If we want to start somewhere, we start where it matters. All right. So I'll close on the routing security part. I'll jump to the IPv6 in the Middle East, because this is something that is happening. My colleagues in this report measure two things, the IPv6 capability and the IPv6 adoption. Let's start with the IPv6 capability. What you see on the screen is for every country in the region here, we took the number of ASNs, the number of networks in this country, and we saw how many of these networks are announcing IPv6 on the internet. So they are capable of starting to receive IPv6 addresses, IPv6 traffic. So we see that Qatar and Oman are in the lead. Like in Qatar, 60% of the networks, they announce IPv6 addresses, and Oman, a little bit less than 40%. Does that mean that Qatar and Oman are better than the other countries? No. Sorry to burst your bubble. In Qatar, we have only 23 networks, all right? In Oman, we have even less. In UAE, we have 99 networks. In Saudi Arabia, we have 150. So even though the percentage might be smaller in UAE and Saudi Arabia, the amount of impact that they have on the IPv6 traffic in the region might be bigger. Ideally, what we want to see, 100% everywhere, 100% everywhere. And before you start asking why is Syria and Yemen not on the screen, and I know that we have colleagues from both Syria and Yemen in the room, it is because the number of networks there is very small. So in Syria, the visible ASNs to the internet are just 2. In Yemen, they are only 3. So that would have skewed the statistics. So this is from the perspective of IPv6 capability. Now what about adoption? Are there users using IPv6? Is there IPv6 traffic? So for that, we wanted to see from the web traffic perspective, so the eyeball usages, what are the content delivery networks seeing? So we took data from Facebook, we took data from Cloudflare, and we took data from Google. So what is the percentage of traffic that Google is seeing over IPv6 coming from the countries in the region? And they would change, so it's not the same number here and there. It depends on how the traffic is going. It depends on if the device is doing V6 or not. But you see that there's consistency. I'm happy to report that Saudi Arabia is scoring very high. So according to Google, 62% of the traffic of the users in Saudi Arabia connect to Google over IPv6. And that means that Saudi Arabia is somewhere between the top 5 to top 8 in the world in terms of IPv6 adoption. Then comes UAE, then comes Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, and so on and so forth. Is this the end destination? Certainly not. Not even for Saudi Arabia and the UAE. For example, what we're doing right now with the regulators and the stakeholders in UAE is to see how we can push this 45% to become 60 and 70 and 80%. All right. What we're doing in other countries, whether it is in Bahrain or in Qatar, that we've been engaged with the regulators and the operators and the other enterprises, the financial sector, the banks, etc., in order to come up with a certain strategy that would allow the migration towards IPv6. This is not something that can happen overnight, like we saw with the ROA. It might take a year or two, depending on the life cycle within the enterprise. In other countries, for example, for the state of Palestine, we helped them develop and review their IPv6 national strategy. We did the same thing in Jordan. We did national surveys in Jordan and Lebanon. So what I'm trying to say is that don't be discouraged if you see countries with 7% or 13% or 1%. We expect that in the next 1 year to 2 years, we'll see more and more numbers on the screen. To give you a reference, last year around the same time, we had a presentation. We were talking about the same thing. Bahrain was around 0%. Qatar was around 0%. At the beginning of the year, following certain workshops and strategies and capacity building, we saw the jump. Is that enough? Certainly not. Do we need to do more? Lots more. But we expect to see some movements in this space. Now, this is supposed to be a short talk. I give very longer talks around this. I can go for hours and hours. Some of you in the room here know how much I talk. But I'll try to stop here and take questions if you have. If you are interested in knowing more, we talked about some countries here that are much more like all the countries almost in the region with analysis and proper methodology explanations. All of this is in the report. And Anastasia sitting in the back, I remember you told me it's in Arabic, right? Also, right? There's an Arabic translation for the report coming up? Yes, hopefully. Coming soon, Shafi. Okay, so please head to this URL or use the QR code. Take a look. It's an easy read. It will give you an overview of the whole region. And I wanted to say this is not the only report that we've issued for the Middle East. At the beginning of the year, we had a report on the IXP growth. Throughout the year, we issued some white papers and reports on how you can get resources, and we need resources in the region. Or, for example, how can you convince your decision makers to adopt IPv6 or to adopt IPKI. We're trying to provide as much insights and as much help as possible to help you in your day-to-day jobs. So, I promise, last word, I stop here. Any questions?
Thank you, Jad.
At least one? No?
Apparently everybody knows what to do now.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.